Hi everybody, welcome to How to Build a Pendulum Jar. I'm showing you the pendulum that I did a couple weeks ago. You can see it's swinging merrily there. So I'm going to go through this step by step, and as always, nothing is written in stone, and your intuition and your own thoughts are going to work well in this process. So I'm going to be honest here and say that the hardest part of doing this was I wanted to do it, but I didn't know what I wanted to do it for. So I had seen this on someone else's post, and she does sell these on Instagram and I think on Etsy for $25. And her purpose was the pendulum would swing when her spell work was successful. You might have a different idea of what you want this for, and I know that I did. So as this is continuing to swing because I moved it, I'm going to put it out of the way here for a second and say that the hardest part for me was making that decision. But I tend to question myself a lot, so I build as I go, and this is okay. You can do this too. I wish I was the kind of practitioner that sat down with lit candles and incense, and I put everything together and voila. But instead, it's like pieces parts over a couple days or a couple weeks, and my prime time to do any work privately is like the 15 minutes before I come downstairs after I'm ready for work. So that's where I'm at, and that may be where you're at too. Do whatever works best for you. All right, so previously I had shown you the sweet jar I had made for myself, and it's the same idea. You can use any kind of jar. For the pendulum jar, you do want to be able to see through it, but you can see that this is a Smucker's jar. It has items in it that I prayed over and made as an intention, and it's the same idea for your pendulum jar. You can see that it's sealed on the top. The one that I made, I had a mason jar at home. So that works really well because your lid is in a couple places. And basically for this, all you need is a jar and something to act as a pendulum and something to make sure it doesn't fall through once your jar is punched. So let's say you don't have this kind of a jar available. If you're like me, you have a lot of these jars available. You can still see through it. You can still see a pendulum as it goes through. Boom. And of course, you can use anything as a pendulum. I have quite a collection here of family medals and wedding rings. And anything you know that it swings free is good as a pendulum. These happen to be on a chain. This happens to be a chain that I got at a craft store. I think it was at Joann Fabrics. You can cut it to any length you want. And of course, I bling the stuff out at the end. This you won't want to do until after you've figured out your length in the jar. So even if you don't know what you're doing yet, you want to do a measurement so that your pendulum swings free but doesn't hit the bottom. All right? So that's what you're going to determine. You're going to cut the length of the chain. You're going to punch a hole in the lid, and you're going to run your chain through here. And then you're going to need to secure it so it doesn't fall back through. And you can put a piece of duct tape up there, you can put a jump ring up there, anything that just secures it, and then you can like bling it out later. So basically, you want to have a swinging jar, a jar that has a swinging pendulum. So the next thing you really need to do is figure out where you want to go with this. So with mine, I ended up starting to layer. And don't forget your spice cabinet. This is a wonderful resource. So here's salt for protection. Now this is just kosher salt, and grab the salt out of your cupboard, perfectly fine. And this happened to be salt that I had put out during the solar eclipse a couple years ago with the lid on. And so I call it fire salt. It has both elements, but any salt is protective. Start gathering your elements. So you can do with that. I have grave dirt from my ancestors' graves because I'm asking them for help and protection as well. I have some pyrite sand. I got this at V-Rock shop. It's an attraction element. Here's a bay leaf for success. You can also write on this, and you don't have to like write with a real pen. You can just take something with water and write your intention on it. That works too. What else? I'm going to show you two good resources of mine. Sigil Witchery. You can create a sigil and you can put that either on the bottom or put it on your cap on the inside. You can also place a loved one's picture in here, or a saint, or an Orisha. And that way when you cap it, that will be looking down at your work. This is great, especially if you maybe want to protect kids. And this is my oldie but goodie, Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. So if you want to use any correspondences, like, I don't know, rosemary is always a favorite. You can throw that in there. You know, if it's a fire sign, you know it's protection. You know it's for dreams. And of course, Google. Always a good resource for that type of thing. So let's say you've started to assemble all this stuff, including your jar. And what you want to do is make sure you ask each element, including your pendulum and your jar, if they'll work for you with this intention. So you would do that. You know, jar, would you work with me? Blah, blah, blah. Salt, would you offer protection? You listen to it, you know, pray over it, and then start adding it to your jar. Well, wait a minute. Before you do that, do this. You've washed your jar out so that, like, you know, nobody wants to get any extra Lexapro in their spell work. You can use something like an incense or a spray to cleanse it. I breathe into the jars, so it has my essence as well as whatever is being offered, like, you know, that particular spray or incense. Sorry for being out of order there. All right, so go ahead and start adding whatever it is you want to put in your jar, layer by layer, praying over it, praying over it. This can take a couple days, or it can take 15 minutes. It's all up to you. So once you've put all of this in, you want to close it, and you know, maybe you've added whatever to the lid as well. You're going to close it, and before you do the melting on of the candle, if you choose to do that, pray over the entire jar. So what I ended up doing was, you know, asking this jar for the particular intention I had for it, asking and thanking all the elements within it, and then I used a rattle, and I rattled around 3 times to seal it. Now, that's just me. You don't have to do that. You will probably have your own method of doing it. So anyway, do all of that, and then drip your candle over it to seal it. So you can see, obviously, with the mason jar, you could get back in there if you needed to, but you probably don't want to. So that's it. You've prayed, you've rattled, you've sealed your jar. I'm going to be honest here, I haven't worked with this a ton because I had that kind of clusterfuck week. So, you know, normally when I work with a pendant anyway, I start it to swing, and then I ask it to swing in a particular direction. If you're noticing that your pendant just doesn't move on its own, you may want to try that technique too. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions, let me know, and happy witching.